to be got a magnet. Lobsters and I don't you grab it.
Welcome to Lobster Magnets Review, the channel, the review. I'm here with my buddy Gorogregoro.
Hi.
And so there was no My Hero Academia this week, and we both knew that the Death Note Netflix adaptation was finally going to be unveiled, and we'd planned like last week that we were going to watch it together. So with no My Hero Academia, we went to it much further, and holy fucking bullshit. I don't think we reviewed anything I like despised, except for maybe the Boruto, which we were kind of like meh about, but like, holy fucking shit, that was so fucking painful.
Well, while I was watching it, I was trying my best to like take everything I knew about, the Japanese version of Death Note. I was trying to like maybe like try and see it with new fresh eyes, like the Americanized version of it, where it was making some very strange decisions about like how the direction of the story should go.
That brings a larger sort of question, like, as a aspired failed writer, I like to think that I take a more holistic perspective and can appreciate how an adaptation requires changes to be made to the story. And you can't have everything, and a true adaptation takes the best bits and stays true to it while making a new piece of media that is greater than the sum of its parts. And just like how, let's take the classic Akira manga. The Akira manga is great. People love the Akira movie. I think the Akira manga is better than the movie, but the movie does a great job of condensing 1,600 pages of story and convoluted stuff down into a digestible 2-hour chunk. So that's an example of a good adaptation. Obviously the Lord of the Rings films are big adaptations of sprawling epics, which leave a lot of things to the cutting room floor. And for the large part, they work, and they brought it to a mainstream audience, and they're part of, contributing to the sort of cultural renaissance that we're seeing now that all, geek shit is, taking over the world. And one thing that makes this adaptation especially painful for me in particular is that, as a long-time advocate for, as the kind of guy who would, throw manga and anime upon people in college and friends and family, there's always a part of me that has, a dog in the fight of, that I'm rooting for this shit to hit the mainstream like all the other nerd stuff. And I do think that we are very close to the point where Hollywood, there are so many comic book properties out in the world. It's just a matter of time where you basically have this treasure trove of long-running fucking fantasy science fiction storylines that are just waiting to be exploited. It's just a question of who's going to do it first. Who's the first person to break that egg? Who's the first person to crack that nutshell and make a way to turn something like Bleach or Naruto or One Piece palatable into a global audience? I don't know how you do that, but I know that there is a way. It's just a question of who does it first. And you keep on hearing things about oh, Bleach is an adaptation of Warner Brothers. Oh, Naruto's going to become a live-action TV series. There's a One Piece live-action TV series, and they all usually get lingered in development hell. And occasionally stuff breaks through, like The Ghost in the Shell, which I still haven't seen, but I was kind of rooting for, despite all the whitewashing controversy. I'll see it at some point. And I was, and there was a part of me that was kind of rooting for this, and even in the previews, I was oh, it's different, but maybe it'll still be good. Maybe it'll be, I can accept that you're going to make an Americanized, localized version of Death Note, and maybe the aesthetic, I could deal with that. But every creative choice here was wrong. Everything was fucking terrible. Everything was stupid. It was a bad adaptation. Terrible choices. Fucking Nate Turner is Light Turner, or Nate Wolf. And the key thing is okay, so it's in this desaturated Donnie Darko fucking high school. That's that. but like the key thing about Light is he's a fucking genius. And you know, they have this weird like Twilight murder dynamic where it's like, you know, the fucking Misa analog. And you know, in some ways that's like a smarter choice. Like I never liked Misa in the original Death Note. I thought she was like just there for like fucking weird gothic Lolita fan service and not much else.
Okay. Yeah, I did think she was like a little bit a brain dead of a character.
She was not a great character. Like, you know, someday I want to do like my pitch of like how I think you could have adapted Death Note into like a form that like, you know, people would get behind. Because it's something I've had in the back of my head of like how you could adapt it into like a trilogy of films and get it like really cleanly and concisely, because there is like a 3-act structure that you could like break it down to. But Misa was never great. But like if you were gonna bring her like a version of her into America that makes sense, basically turn her into Paris Hilton. That would kind of make sense to like the Japanese pop idol. But here she's just kind of like this Kristen Stewart, and they like imply that, oh, she's the real brains behind it. Yeah, she's a more empowered
She
thing,
wasn't even really like Misa at all. Like she never got. There was nothing about Shinigami eyes.
No.
Like being able to be like more powerful than Light himself in some ways, but with her she was like, just kind of like, she was like more evil. She was like pulling the strings a bit more. She was being more manipulative.
It was a completely terrible choice. Light is supposed to be a fucking genius. Like that is the definitive thing. That is the whole point.
Light here was a fucking moron.
He's a fucking stupid moron. Like there's this big scene in like early in Death Note where they show how Light came up with like this whole mechanism of how, like, you know, he would protect the notebook.
In the anime version, not in this version.
In the anime and the manga, you know, they had this whole scene about how Light would protect the book, and he had this whole mechanism, how if it's not triggered by him, it will set it to fire. That sequence is completely superfluous and pointless, but what it, you know, because it never comes into play in the larger series, but what it shows how smart he is, and it shows, you know, how much effort and care that he knows to, like, you know, hide the fucking Death Note, not to, like, talk about it in the middle of the fucking hallway like a fucking idiot, and just carry it around in fucking school.
Yeah, and use it to impress girls that he likes, you know.
Jesus, oh yeah, she's got this fucking death boner.
Are you sure you want to know what it does?
And he tells her like the first fucking thing, like versus the original Light, and oh my god, he's such an idiot. And like I can almost see like a version of this working. Like you could see what they're kind of like fucking Adam Wingard was going for. Like I can almost see like
it sort of
Jesse
makes sense.
Eisenberg, like Christian Stewart dynamic working there, because like the more I think about it, Jesse Eisenberg would be a brilliant Light. He would be so fucking good as Light. Basically just have him like he was in The Social Network playing Mark Zuckerberg, and that would be an amazing version of Light.
Maybe. I never saw The Social Network.
Fuck you. Social Network's a great movie. How did you not see it? You God damn it, Greg. What's wrong with you?
Sorry, I'm not caught up completely with mainstream media all the time, but...
Yes, that was when you were in your fucking League of Legends hole. But anyway, like Jesse Eisenberg, I can see is Light, because Jesse Eisenberg, like, you know, there's two modes. He plays like arrogant, super smart asshole, or, you know, super nervous dweeby guy. And you know, he's those two things, and he's very good at those two things. And one of those things would have been good for Death Note, and who knows, maybe he's too big of a star now. You just had to fucking get Nate Wolf, who was fucking miserable, and the choice of having Misa, and like the L almost kind of works, but not really. Like, I hate the fact that he like walks around with his stupid thing, you know, the little mask on is really stupid. I hate the fact that he like just approaches Light in public, in plain view. I hate the fact that he just comes over and like storms the fucking house. It's supposed to be a
that was a
game.
really dumb scene. Like, how did he just walked into Light's house without anybody noticing? Like, I have something to talk with you. Like it was like he walked in so casually, like he has the keys to the house, basically.
It's so stupid.
It was such a dumb scene. It was like, hey, Elle, how did you get in here?
they're all really stupid.
Are you here for dinner?
and like you can see like vague ideas from the manga that are like kind of just taken very, very poorly. Like the whole brilliant thing about like L's introduction in the manga and anime is that like and the thing that kills me is that like, you know, so much of the Death Note stuff that was like, you know, written in like the early 2000s could like, you know, definitely be like updated to like modern social media and whatnot, and like, you know, like what made Else, you know, such a great presence initially before you get the big reveal of what he looks like is the fact that you know, he's just this letter who speaks through this fucking voice modulator thing, and he's like this omnipotent fucking presence, which makes him like this creepy thing that nobody knows what he looks like. And Interpol, you know, just goes to this guy thing named L, and he's this mysterious presence. He's basically anonymous. That's how he's treated. Like, he was anonymous before. Anonymous had like crystallized into a thing, and you couldn't even do that. You couldn't even like just like show the symbol and introduce it to him as like this omnipotent force. That was why in like the 4th episode of the series it was like such a great thing, because like it starts out with this big grand storyline. Oh my god, all these people are dying in the world, and then like, you know, this guy was on television crying Kira, then he dies, then L comes, and it seems like, you know, you have this supernatural force versus like this Illuminati conspiracy force that are just gonna clash, and then the story gets like smaller as it becomes this like cat and mouse game. And that is what Death Note is about. It's not L running around with this goddamn.
I know. Okay, I understand the argument of like, okay, it should stay true to the anime and manga, but this adaptation is just so different. I feel like it's trying to do something very different with the material. It's really hard to compare the anime with this.
They're all terrible choices. They're all unequivocally terrible choices.
Yeah, I mean, they really are. It's like they're not trying to stay true to the manga at all. They're very loosely adapting it. So it's like it's like seeing what you get out of it, and this is what this movie is. It's like an alligator to pig in a blender, and like you serve it to somebody, you're like, how does this taste?
yeah. Oh my god, they're all bad choices. Everything is a bad choice. The high school, ooh, you're murdering people and I want to like get it on, is a bad choice. Yes. L running around in the streets, you know, getting more, you know, distraught is a bad choice.
That was weird. That was very weird. I did not like that.
The only thing I could vaguely compliment is like, you know, William Dafoe's like voiceover is Ryuk.
Yes, William Dafoe actually did a pretty decent job as Ryuk. He actually pulled off the
like,
Ryuk very well.
You know, like here's like an example of like you know, an adaptation that I didn't mind. Like you know, in the anime manga, Ryuk is kind of like a little bit of a boob. He like tries to be manipulative and whatnot, but he's basically just this bored guy. He's like, oh, let's see what you're gonna do and make it interesting. Yeah. And he's like addicted to apples, and that's how Light gains like superiority over him and gets him to do shit for him.
Ryuk in anime was like way more passive, and this Ryuk is like very much more manipulative, and he's like
more the devil on the shoulder. It's like, ooh, what's gonna happen next?
Yeah.
And they're like, ooh, you can give it all up, but I'm gonna give it to someone else. And like, you know, the other Ryuk, the only thing he says is like, everyone who has had the Death Note dies in agony and torment. You sure you want to accept it? Okay, just make it interesting. I'm bored. And you know, I could like accept the more traditional like evil demonic presence, but like, you know, like I can accept that as an adaptation. But holy fucking balls shit! Everything, every decision is terrible. I fucking hate that the prom scene of the winter thing. It's like, oh, they're giving fuck you. Oh, they're like alternative girls, and she's like an alternative. The Misa girl's like an alternative girl. She's exactly like the fucking, you know, girl in Twilight, where, you know, she's like, you know, conventionally pretty, but she still acts like disaffected. It's like, I'm not one of the popular kids. I'm more soulful and meaningful, so that's how you can identify me, geek girls of the world.
Yeah. Can I just say, like, the whole prom the prom night scene, like them like switching the top hat with someone else was just like so bad. Such a bad way to lose FBI agents.
The fact that
FBI agents.
He just like goes in and says you're Kira, and he has like no fucking evidence.
How did
even
she?
in the Japanese like
How did she tase an FBI agent? Like, how did she do that?
It was stupid, and there was not even like a build up and like the investigation. Like even in the live action adaptation of the Japanese one, you know, they had the scene where like L like figures out how like the deaths of all the people like correspond to like a student's schedule. Then there's also the big scene where like, you know, he broadcasts his message in Japan first, and because of Kira reacting, that like eliminated all the other parts of the world, and he knows he's in Japan, which you could easily do in like Times Square or like, you know, wherever your American equivalent is.
Yeah. You know, there's something about
You're speaking very broadly. You get to like a more concise point here.
what I'm saying is that they're trying to translate it into a kind of more American show kind of audience, and with American show ideals of like, oh, we gotta get the girl at the end of the show. It's not about like, you know, super hyper analytic details a lot of the time, but it's more like, you know, a teenager with angsty issues, and he's just like, oh, he really hates the world right now, but he's also really horny at the same time. He's got to get the girl and show off his death note and kill a bunch of people, and you know, get into a cool chase scene.
It does speak to like, you know, the fact that, you know, it was written by like 3 fucking people, so I'm sure it had like a billion adaptations. This like Death Note has been like in production hell for like a long time, and many people like there was a point where Shane Black was supposed to direct it, but like Adam Wingard isn't like a terrible filmmaker. He's done like The Guest, which is like basically like a Terminator kind of movie about this guy who's like, you know, basically comes in and he claims to be a friend of a guy who died in like Iraq, but then it turns out he's like a, you know, military, you know, Jason Bourne kind of agent, and little by little he gets psychotic to the point where he like kills almost everyone in the family, and he's like this unstoppable killing machine. So basically it's kind of like a modern version of the Terminator. And he also did this movie called You're Next, which is like a siege movie, like a sort of like a siege movie where like, you know, this group of people is stuck in a house and they're being sieged by people with masks. And you know, I've seen bits and pieces of it. It's actually a pretty good movie. But like, it feels like he didn't really give a shit about the Japanese manga, and he just sort of like took the core concepts of like, oh, this thing with lots of rules. There's a cool demon, Final Destination superpowers, and then I'm just gonna make American teen stuff. I'm gonna make a sexy teen movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell if like he didn't really care about the manga or the anime at all.
Interviews of like William Dafoe talking about Ryuk, he said he didn't really read much of the manga. I'm not quite sure Adam Wingard, but a lot of the same story of like people who were interviewing, they all said that they tried not to read too much of the manga.
Really?
Yeah. Oh god, I can't decide which I hate more. This or like the Platinum End from, you know, the same creators of Death Note that I'm really disappointed in, but I guess that still feels a little bit more interesting than anything here.
Cause like the guy who acted as Light, I feel like it feels like they just didn't like they made a mockery of like what Light was.
He had a terrible script, and he wasn't a good enough actor to elevate the script, and you know, there's not much you can do. It was a double negative. It was bad material and not the strongest person to like, you know, anchor that material. The script makes him seem like a fucking moron, and like, ooh, yeah, it was interesting though. I was reading someone else's review. Someone was trying to be vaguely positive, and they saw like, this ultimate like, Black Lives Matter versus like white privilege because whatchamacallit, fucking light and Nia. Or the ultimate form of privilege in the terms of they have this supernatural power and they're using it to like exact justice, and then he's got this sort of like hoodie look. None of this is intentional. This is just sort of like secondary subtext, but you could almost say that it's like, sort of like Black Lives Matter versus white privilege, but obviously that's not really intended. I don't think it's.
I don't know if it was intentional at all.
No, it doesn't feel like it. It just feels like a happy accident in terms of like, oh, let's just have him conceal his face because we can't. Oh, so fucking stupid.
I actually thought the guy who played L was okay at playing L. Like, obviously, towards the end when he was like doing that whole chase scene thing was like so terrible. It was like
that was fucking miserable.
But like, it's because Light is so moronic, it makes L worse as a character. Because like L shouldn't have had this much of a challenge fighting Light. Because this version of Light was such a fucking moron. He was talking about the Death Note in the hallways. He's like yelling at his girlfriend like, why'd you kill all the FBI agents?
In the fucking middle of the school. It was like all people who could understand it, and it's so stupid. And it's like that's not what Light is. That's not the point of him. The whole point is that like he's the perfect little elite straight student, and but he always had the little power of cure, niggling in the back of his core, and the Death Note just gives him to like enact his like superiority complex. And like, oh, you killed FBI agents, fucking moron. And it's amazing how like some scenes seem so expensive while others like feel really cheap. Like all the police press conferences felt really cheap. And like it's amazing how much better directed the Tetsuo Araki like fucking anime from 2006 is than the fucking 2017 multi-million-dollar Netflix fucking movie.
I'll admit too that the Japanese live-action Death Note was also pretty mediocre. I mean, I hardly remember it.
It was still 10 times better than this. It wasn't great, but like I felt like it captured the spirit a lot better.
Yeah, it probably did. It's funny, like if you try and adapt the anime like so. As they did with this.
Yeah, but they're all bad choices. They're all stupid choices. Like none of them felt like they were their own like good distinctive things. Like okay, Game of Thrones has a scene with Daenerys like finally coming to Westeros and like leading the Dothraki and attacking like the Lannister loot train. And like that doesn't happen in the fucking any of the books, and probably won't happen in any of the books. But it still feels like a logical progression of the material that's being adapted, and it's the kind of things that people want to see.
Mm-hmm. There's something about this that had a potentially good thing. It had a potentially good thing. Like there was there's something about it that had a little bit of a Donnie Darko vibe, and I love Donnie Darko. I think that could have potentially worked in a sense.
But it was not smart enough to like follow through on anything. Like the scenes where it thinks it's smart is like where like Misa, whatever the fuck her name is, like tries to like ooh, I wrote your name in the death note, so you have to give me the death note. But then Light does his like convoluted thing. But like,
oh my god, that was so stupid at the end. Okay. You're playing with like literal fire. You never experimented with this before. You don't know.
And the rules aren't even really well established either. Like at least in the fucking like manga and anime, they're like gradually introduced. But like here, it's just like, oh, this is rule 27. Oh, this is rule 90. Oh, you can burn a page, then but it's only one person. Blah 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 blah. Like there's some stupid like even in the anime, there's some stupid fucking shit. Like the entire thing about like the whammy home is really fucking stupid, but because it's like introduced so late after L's death in the anime, oh spoiler alert, you just kind of go with it.
I'm sorry. Can you say that again? Just
the whammy home.
What about the whammy home?
The whammy home is stupid. Everything about the whammy home is stupid. The fact that there's like this, millionaire guy who has this orphanage for geniuses, and then he just like spends the rest of his fucking life like being this butler to like one of those geniuses is stupid. No matter the more thought you think about it, it's dumb. But you accept it because you don't learn about it till much later, and then it just kind of flows by, and you don't have too much time to think about it.
Yeah, it's like whatever, man. That's just how this weird universe made L.
Made L, and how
the important thing is that L is, who he is right now, and he's
exactly. He's the super genius, super autistic detective guy. And God, there's like one important thing that like of characterization of L that's like so important to understanding him. That like everyone, like, you remember the special bonus chapter of Death Note that they released to like coincide with one of the movies?
Where Light was like visiting L's grave or something?
No, that was like
was that
like it was only in the manga. No one's ever like animated it, surprisingly enough. It was basically like several years after Death Note. Nier's like kind of older. He's like a teenager, and he's basically like in this hall filled with. And basically, there's another Kira. Like one of the Shinigamis passes a Death Note into the world, and then
he gets caught like super quickly or something.
Well, no, they wind up killing themselves.
Oh.
Because the whole point is he tells them, like, basically Nier says that the case doesn't interest him. Because, like, the prime motivation of L, like, all the little genius kids thought L was a brilliant mind, but L says that no, he's just incredibly selfish. The only reason why he does the detective work is because he enjoys solving complex problems. Just like they like solving problems, and he doesn't see himself as a hero of justice. He just sees himself as someone who's like selfishly playing a game for his own enjoyment.
Yeah, the whole Nier Mellow thing, that was just like, that's a whole nother piece of cake. That's like a whole different kind of piece of cake.
That is like the most important thing to understand about L, that he doesn't see himself as a hero. That he's ultimately doing this because the cases fascinate him.
L always does it for justice. Like, he said so in the anime. Like, he's like, finally get justice. This is, he's very like autistic or whatever he is, but he's always about, doing the right thing for, solving the case to catch the bad guys.
To a degree, but then that like changes.
I think that's more. You're thinking of Nier than.
No. This is like basically what kind of like made him to be like the successor of L. Here I'm like looking through it right now because like it was like the most important thing, and Nier basically says he's not gonna like follow anything to like follow through with the case because it doesn't interest him, and he doesn't find it worthy of his attention. And then that's what kind of like makes the person, here he goes.
Yeah, but that's
Nier. So Nier says, I've only talked to L
That's
once.
not L.
No, listen to this. I've only talked to L once. To be precise, I didn't actually say a thing. I think it was a little before L started the Kira case. Lammy's children were given a chance to talk to L. But even if it was called a conversation, it was just children asking L questions and him answering. L voice only, and he could only see us through the camera. Everyone asked him questions, and L would answer each one by one. At that time, I didn't think L would put it so bluntly. It's not a sense of justice. Figuring out difficult cases is my hobby. If you measured good and evil deeds by current laws, I would be responsible for many crimes. The same way you all like to solve mysteries and riddles and clear video games more quickly. For me too, it's simply prolonging something I enjoy doing. That's why I only take on cases that pique my interest. It's not justice at all. And if it means being able to clear a case, I don't play fair. I'm a dishonest, cheating human being who hates losing. So that is like, the sort of core tenet of L. In fact, I will link this one-shot manga in the the description so you can all read it, you little otaku nerds. And I'm gonna link it to you, Greg.
I have. Police officers for the first time, and everyone is like trying to get the trust going of like, can we really trust L? Can we really trust each other? And then L is just like, because the fact that you show up here is like really meaningful, justice will prevail. You remember this?
Yeah, I do remember that, but I feel like that's just him, like, truly, like, trying to, like, get them on his side so he can use them as tools for his case. I feel like the true core of L is this thing. This is, like, the Death Note creative team. I'm not going to try and mangle their names, like, saying, like, what they think L is truly. And through the actions, it displays it. L doesn't play fair. There's like a scene where like he, kidnaps Misa and he's basically torturing her and waterboarding her for information. And L constantly he doesn't get a warrant. He like places, he says fuck you to like people's sense of privacy in place by like implementing wiretapping, and he does all kinds of underhanded methods, including like hiring those like side people like the con artist guy and the thief woman, the Catwoman thief.
Yeah, I think I remember that. But I don't know. I feel like if we're going by just that one Q&A with the children, that was like way before like Light popped up. I feel like L had a lot of character growth when he was dealing with Light, when he was dealing with Kira. Like, I feel like his sense of like, what's morally right and wrong, like, grew because of, working on that case. To me, in my perspective.
Well, that brings a larger thing of how you read Death Note, and there are two things that like I want to bring about in terms of like interpreting Death Note. That like ultimately Death Note feels like more edgy and subversive, but it was ultimately published in Shonen Jump. It is technically a shonen manga, despite whatever lofty things you might think it has about morality and justice and whatnot. It makes it feel like more sophisticated than it really is. Not to say that, it's not an enjoyable piece of thing, but like, in terms of like placing it where it lies within the genre pantheon, it is 100% a shonen manga. So now that we know that it's a shonen manga, we know that essentially it's about the power of friendship, and there is a scene where like, when Light loses his memories before he regains Kira, there is a scene where he's like, a large arc where he's like teamed up with L, and they basically cooperate and learn to like each other through the power of friendship. And L's like,
this is all the anime and manga, by the way.
This is all the anime and the manga.
We've been going off on a tangent.
This is the fucking movie.
This is not the Netflix movie right now. This is anime manga right now.
Yeah, exactly. So that's sort of like the crust of their friendship, and L like learning the power of friendship until because essentially L is the hero of the story. Light is not, despite he basically becomes an evil, more megalomaniacal maniac as the things go on, versus like the dumb version we get here, where he's so fucking awful.
Wait, I think that L is evolving as a character when he's putting his more of his life on the line.
He always was. That was always like part of his. But I don't know if he evolved. He just evolved through the sense of the power of friendship. That's what it made him. But he was still ultimately the cases were a hobby. There wasn't some sort of altruistic aim, and that's what makes it's so devastating for all the other children in the home, and that's why I love that epilogue one-shot chapter so much, because I feel like that's the most revealing thing about what really motivates L, and it explains so much of his actions. Which, and of course,
I agree. In the beginning, it probably did, and then especially with this Kira case, though, when he has to go out and get out of his comfort zone and trust these cops one-on-one. The cops I feel like the cops had a huge effect on him as a character, because they were L, we can't possibly trust you, if you're sitting at home on a laptop, perfectly safe. You have to you have to be there in order to
There's definitely a lot of forming of their sort of relationship, but ultimately L is a selfish character, selfish in his own ways, just like how Light is selfish, but he used his thing in a more beneficial thing. And then of course none of that's in the fucking Netflix movie.
Yes. But
L's just this crazy guy who eats sweets and has to regulate his sleep, and he is this weird fucking Japanese butler, which isn't really well explained, but then he kills him, then L goes off the edge, and it's fucking terrible. Everything is stupid.
L in this one, there wasn't really a build up at all to him revealing himself to the cops.
You have to have that build up. And if you don't have that build-up, it's just stupid. This guy with a face mask who's talking to a press conference.
I think the face mask was supposed to represent his mistrust of people. In some,
I think it's just him being mysterious, and the fact that the murder methods was his you don't know face and name, and there's supposed to be this sort of tick for tack anteing up, but the movie was not subtle enough to really execute upon that. Because the Death Note is at its best, it's this cat and mouse game of slow withdrawals, where even a tennis match is this passive aggressive competition of subtext, and there was none of that sense of as over the top as chip eating is. There is this sense of tact and grace that was not existent in any of
at the end of it, and just so eye-rollingly cringy.
Yeah.
How stupid some of these characters act sometimes. It's
it's really hard to sell that Light Turner has this super master plan of how to use the Death Note to save himself. When he's talking about oh, you killed FBI agents in the middle of the fucking school. It's it's such a weird tonally, because I guess it's trying to be hard R, because oh my god, look at all the cool gore, this guy's getting decapitated, he's saying fuck a lot. It's what are you trying to, who are you trying to appeal to? You want to be this Donnie Darko quasi edgy thing, but like you're tonally all over the map. You don't know what you want to be. If you want to be like this Final Destination supernatural thing, or you want to be like fucking Twilight melodrama bullshit.
I think it's trying to appeal to teenagers.
I don't know. It's a complete clusterfuck. Like I can't imagine. Like it would be interesting to like show it to my sister because her tastes are kind of like basic bitch, and see what she would think of it. But I don't think she'd like it. You know, there's no way you're gonna like sell anyone who like is a fan of the Death Note manga or anime to like any of this.
If you like the Death Note anime or manga, you will not like this. I guarantee it. 100%. You will not like this.
It's a shame. So I guess
this is like pig alligator, like blended up in a blender and served to you raw. And they're like, "Go ahead. This could be good."
No, but it's completely abysmal, and there's very few virtuous things, and it's just another embarrassment in the long list of manga to anime movie adaptations that are all fucking terrible because they always have to be.
Like the writing of it sucks so much. Like
Ryuk
he's put in really awkward situations all the fucking time. But Ryuk is really good. Ryuk was played really well.
I like William Dafoe's Ryuk for like all 5 minutes he was in there. William Dafoe must have loved that. Nice big paycheck. He's only in there for a few seconds.
And the CG for Ryuk was actually pretty decent.
Yeah, but like the supernatural scares were really dumb where he was like in the classroom and then like all the fucking like tables are flying around and like, it's like what the fuck?
That was pretty unnecessary, but it didn't bother me that much, I guess. It's like it is kind of weird reaction.
Stupid, but it was
like,
not the stupidest
like
thing that we've
screaming
seen
like a little
like
like screaming like a little girl, like just like he's like hiding under the desk.
Yeah, that was really over exaggerated.
I mean,
I thought you were gonna give it like a 3. Yeah, it was abysmal. I fucking hate it. I think it was horribly terrible, laughable, and I remember I read an okay like review where someone gave it like a 7 out of 10. I was like, oh, maybe it'll be still okay. No, fuck you.
No,
fuck you.
There was like, I'll admit, there's like some. The way he does do it, like in a whole chase sequence of like him like face dunking someone's face in a soup while chasing Light down and like holding this glowing gun and like trying to shoot him down. That glowing gun
is stupid. The chase scene is stupid.
And then like ultimately getting hit behind the head with a board. And
Yeah, from some random guy who's like Lord Kira, even though they haven't really established like their like Kira cult.
and how does he know? How does he know he's really Lord Kira? Just like that seems really dumb. Like. How does Elle find Light in the middle of the street, running to the Ferris wheel? How did he know where he was going?
I don't know, it was just how the movie was supposed to end. Like the police investigation of like how they're following him isn't even really established well. They're like tailing him, but yeah, everything about it was stupid. Light was stupid. Elle was not handled super well.
How did his girlfriend? Okay, how did his girlfriend sneak behind an FBI agent and tase him with his own taser?
Yeah.
How did that fucking happen?
That definitely, like, you know, pushed things beyond like the realm of believability.
Oh god.
Yeah,
It was so nauseously bad.
It was terrible. So it looks like we get another 4 or 5 years until we fucking see like maybe a good animated manga. But it's gonna happen not now, but someday. Someday everyone's gonna like realize that, you know, we have a treasure trove of like stories, and since we live in a world where like Harry Potter Part 7. Harry Potter 7 Part 2 can exist in movie theaters. Why not One Piece 13 Part A?
There was one positive. Like, there's another positive I just remembered. Like, watching that chase scene between Elle and Light actually made me laugh out loud. It's like, it's so like abysmally bad. It was funny. Like,
yeah. But like that's not a good sign. Like I enjoy so bad it's good things, but like, oof.
Yeah, it was like a weird. I was laughing in a weird kind of sadistic way almost. It was just like, I can't believe they're actually doing this. Like, this is like literally the farthest away they could go from the anime and manga. Like, have Elle and Light like go on some kind of crazy ass action chase scene.
Well, you could say that they had like the sequence where they're like chained together and they fight each itself, but that was a little bit more earned than this one. Yeah, it was fucking terrible. Okay, so go buy the real Death Note.
Yes, go buy the
anime, the fucking good one. Yeah,
wash this terrible shit out of your mouth and
Looks
get
like
the real thing, the real good stuff, the real Death Note, which is actually really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the best things. That's why they tried to make an adaptation of this. And I don't know why they failed this miserably, but they somehow did. But it was because someone in America really loved Death Note. And yeah, the original Death Note. That is why this was made.
That's definitely what you want. Go watch and read the original Death Note. It's great. It's great material. Great, much handled, much better than anything we've seen here. Read the fucking one-shot manga. That'll give you more insight into Elle and, you know, how things work 10 times better than anything else. I'll have a link down to that below.
You should link the anime and the manga, and just like,
yeah,
this is like vomit cleanser.
To bleach out the terrible taste, because yeah, this was fucking abysmal. And
don't actually drink bleach though.
Yeah. So it looks like we'll have to wait another couple years, and then one day when like everyone's like, "Oh my God, One Piece is so good," and then us weebs will take over the earth as we like, you know, we'll be like the Game of Thrones book readers, holding our knowledge over like the people who want to know about the Will of D and fucking other shit. But that day is not today, and it is not going to be for a while now. I think this is definitely going to set that cause back for a while.
Just one thing real quick. What do you think of Light's father? How do you think he played the...
I hated him. I hated him. I didn't think he was very good. Like, I like the stern father from like the fucking Death Note anime and mangas, like this really no nonsense guy, while he was like, "I'm just America cop. Yeah, I'm a good old boy in blue. We're gonna get this guy."
Yeah, he was very... This one was very down to earth, kind of like...
I mean, I guess you could say he's like localized, just like Nia was localized, and like, he wasn't horribly offensive, but he wasn't very good either.
Yeah, like towards the end, like he didn't feel very smart as a character either.
No, he felt stupid, just like everything felt stupid. So I mean, maybe I'll try your suggestion. I'm gonna like title this as opposed to like Death Note review or Death Note. I'll just say Death Note 2017 is a flaming dumpster pile.
All right. Well,
yeah.
I'm sorry. This probably took longer than it should have, but I really had a lot to get off my fucking chest about this. It's like.
This was pretty fucking abysmal. Ugh, I gotta go get ready for sleepy fun time. But yeah, this deserved every worst thing we've reviewed on this channel yet, and makes Berserk 2017 look like a masterpiece.
Oh God, yeah. When you say that, it was like, wow. Actually, I would say visually, this movie is definitely better. It's better visually, but like in terms of story, it's way worse.
Yeah.
Like stories, like so garbage and awful. But the visuals in this movie were actually kind of nice.
Yeah, they were kind of nice-ish. There's like a lot of color play and whatnot, and there's some well-directed scenes, nice-looking scenes, but like, yeah, it's still an abysmal movie.
Yeah.
All right, so buy Death Note, get the good one, and remember, lobsters and tennis, but don't you grab it.
Magazine fire, lobsters